You gotta love the seasonal change, and I feel like there's no better place to experience it in America than in the rural or in small towns. But more than that, I would say that the best place to live, to have a life in America, if there's still a place to have a good life in America, is in small towns. But the thing is, what is small town life really like? A lot of people get their understanding and their idea of what small town America is like from movies or TV shows, or maybe they've driven by them at some point while on a road trip, but never actually experienced what it's like to exist in a small town, to live in one. And for those who haven't, I can tell you that you've really missed out. And it's not a judgment. It's not anything like that. It's just life in small town America is a very special thing. And unless you have lived there, most people don't understand what it's actually like. For people who aren't from America, you need to understand that over 70% of this country is populated by rural populations, by small towns. It's only, I think, 28 to 30% of the country that's more suburban, urban. But the vast majority of the population of America actually does live in those urban, suburban areas. Places that are cloistered and choked off from the beautiful natural aesthetic that America has to offer. And that is one of the great features of living in a small town. But I guess the question is, how does it differ from living in a city? Because there are benefits to living in a city. Whether you're in America or anywhere else, cities offer prosperity. They often draw people in with the illusion of grandeur, a list of endless opportunities and the illusion of choice. That the city that never sleeps, the city that's always in a kind of perpetual motion, just can't really deliver. I think we can all agree that cities often have us chasing something perpetually, but in the end, people often end up chasing nothing. I think in contrast, small towns offer something beyond kind of the noise of the world. It has a silence that really kind of speaks to the heart. Here, in a place like this, it's easier to find truth, a kind of quiet simplicity that I think lends itself to the human spirit more than living in a crowded, dirty, dusty city. It's something that you can feel it kind of elevates your soul. The small town America is a place where you can trust people. There's not the same dangers lurking behind every corner. Not every interaction has an undertone of violence to it, like you do get in many cities throughout America. American cities are dangerous places, don't get me wrong, and there's very good people there. But how does it compare to the rural areas? How does it compare to small town America? They're just safe. They're safer. The kind of crimes that happen in small towns, of course, you have a lot of alcoholism, you have domestic abuse. These are things that exist everywhere. But, your huge major crimes, your criminal organizations, your gangs, these are just something that don't exist there. And they're not even something that's in your mind. The only time your mind has access to the awareness of these things is through media, through movies. You turn on Netflix and you watch your crime series. That's where you get it. And where do they take place? The cities, obviously. In the cities, you can walk around 1,000 different people and feel completely alone at the same time. It's like walking through a crowd of faceless shadows. No one knows each other. No one knows anything about each other's lives. No one has a care for anyone. Just people sharing space with no actual connection to one another or the place that they're even in. It's just going about business as usual, and that's the core ethos of living in the city. I think the city separates us from our neighbors, our families, our connections with each other. And this is something that thrives in small towns. This is something that thrives in the rural areas. Even though you may not like your neighbor, you know their family, you know who they are, you know their backstory. And I know that this can be discomforting to a lot of people. It can feel disquieting, kind of losing that sense of privacy. Because that's one of the big things that people with usually lesser reputations have against small towns once they move to cities. Like, everyone was in each other's business. Everyone knew each other. It's like, well, this is how societal connections work, and they thrive in small towns. Even in a time now where people are struggling as much as they are, there's still those kind of connections that can really touch the soul, touch the heart in a way that, like I said, you just can't get them in a city necessarily. Because in a small town, there is no isolation really, unless it's by choice. Social interaction and bonding and friendship has actual opportunity. When you pass someone, it's a familiar face. Every handshake, every smile means something, and it isn't met with a kind of suspicion like you would get in the city. If I'm in DC and I make eye contact with somebody and I smile, what's wrong with this guy? That's always the thought that comes across your head in the city. But in a small town, we know our neighbors, we support them. We have barbecues with them. We invite them over. If something happens to them, we're going to bring food over. We care. it's means something. And that's one of the great beauties of a small town in America, is you have that. And it used to be a very common thing that seems antiquated now, but man, does it feel good. It feels good to have that kind of connection, because in return, we're supported. In communities like this, we're not lost in a faceless crowd. Instead, we're kind of found in an embrace of others. And one of the biggest reasons for that is just simply the pace of life. Pace in life in an American town is just slower. And one of the great things that you get when you travel around the world and you realize that, people exist on different timelines. People move at a different pace, right? There isn't this kind of structured way of life that we have in kind of the corporate world or the American cities. It's very similar to what we have in small towns. Of course, business people are business people. You have to conduct your business when you said you were going to do it. But the pace of life in a city is absolutely relentless. The clock governs our every action. It pushes us forward. It always pushes us forward until we lose ourselves in that chase, in that pursuit to accomplish the next task after task after task. And this is what it's like to live in cities. This is what it's like to kind of live in that kind of corporate world. And this is a world that I'm very familiar with because I am a member of that corporate world. I choose to commute quite a distance. In small towns, time is not the enemy. It's our companion. When you live in a small town, you learn that you can savor the day. For me, like in small towns, I love to go fishing. This weather being like it is, it's time for me to bust out my fishing gear, because that's what I do. I grew up on the Chesapeake Bay, and I've spent so much time at this point in Wyoming and West Virginia that, fishing is what I do. I love it. It is my passion. But there's no rush, because life in small towns is not measured by seconds. It's measured by the moments that you share, slowed conversation, and kind of the peaceful rhythm to nature. We can always look at the rural areas in small towns and say, these people are always on one political side, and say you have to go beyond that. I think it's important for people to find a connection with nature, and you're usually going to find that in these more rural areas where people have just grew up in it. Push all that, the rest of the BS aside, and understand that, having a connection with nature really teaches you a deeper truth about yourself. And while people will look at people from flyover states, people from small towns, and kind of look at them with a kind of suspicious form of ignorance, the fact is people from small towns are usually very self-aware. They usually know themselves much better than people from cities really do, because people from cities are usually not very unique people. They're people who kind of fall in line with one style or ideology. They're cookie cutter people. And when you grow up kind of in nature, when you grow up forced into a state of introspection and self-awareness, you have a real better understanding of what life is really like and your place in it. And I feel like that's something that's lost in the city. It's very easy to become deluded into kind of who you are and what your role is in the city, or your idea of self-importance, or that you are important. But when you live in a small town, you rediscover the art of living. You don't live in haste, you live in patience. You don't live in competition, you live in cooperation. And in the small town, in the rural parts of America, time is not a burden, it's a gift. Having such an international community as we have on this channel, I get to see a lot of presumptions that people have with American people, and usually it's not too far off, because most of our population, they do kind of chase possessions, they chase lifestyles. It can cause people to go into ruinous spending, where they accumulate debt and debt and debt and debt. And a big reason for this is just part of our culture, which at this point now in America is a city-based culture. Our ideology, our identity originates from cities at this point. And in cities, wealth is measured by possession. It's measured by what one owns within the walls of their apartment. But I always find that this kind of wealth is a very hollow one. I think it kind of changes us to a system where we're forever working, forever paying. And it promises comfort. It promises stability. But the only thing it ever offers in the work culture that we have is exhaustion. In small towns, wealth is measured by quality of life, not the quality of things. The quality of the person that you are matters more than what you've accumulated in your household. In my experience in small towns, people who are usually often the wealthiest, who have the most things, are often the most distrusted. And it's seen as a kind of selfishness that goes against the kind of natural identity that arises organically in small communities. In cities, cost of living is a continual burden. Of course, things are getting much more expensive and it's getting much harder to live, of course. But the amount of labor that you can put out and the income that comes in actually goes much further than it does in the city. When I lived in San Francisco, you had to make well over 6 figures and you'd still be under the poverty line. Take $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in a beautiful small town in Georgia or here in Ohio, and it goes much further. People can have lives. And like I said, it's not just in chasing wealth, because the most valuable thing that you have is your connections with people. You may not be able to afford the brand new gaming system. This is true, but you're probably going to be getting invited to barbecues, to birthdays, to go see the game. You're probably going to meet friends of friends and actually extend your social network, because that kind of suspicion that you get in the cities just isn't there. What is affluence? The measure of affluence is just simply different. In small towns, the most affluent person is the most respected person, the most trusted person. And that respect and that trust doesn't come through wealth. It comes with positive social transactions. In small town, we build those relationships. We embrace our connection with the land, and in the freedom of living life according to our own terms. And lastly, small towns in America are where the future is now. It used to be like everyone's fleeing to the cities to pursue a better job, to pursue wealth, to try to gain access to the American dream, but I say that's over now. You see nothing but people trying to leave the suburbs, leave urban areas, to come out to the rural areas, to come out to these small towns, because there's an undeniable truth when you walk around a town square that has a thriving main street. An undeniable truth in that the simplicity of life means more, and you feel it, and it connects with you. And the people are different in many ways, and not always good. We have to be completely honest, but you can still work with them for the most part. The city offers us something that's called progress, but we have to ask ourselves, what progress is it that asks us to sacrifice our time, our lives, and our future? What future does a child have being raised in a place that's starving of human connection? A place where nature is distant and where the heart grows weary with noise. But it's in a small town that we can build a future that lasts, futures where generations can thrive. Not just a life of stone and steel, but a life of love and support. A place where children grow up not just with knowledge, but with wisdom. A place where they're raised with the warmth of community and in the embrace of nature. And in the understanding that life is not just a race, but it's a journey. So that's what it comes down to. And for many people, the choice is kind of before you. And if you're looking to visit America, please, please, please go to a small town, find one, Google it, and just go, because it can be beautiful and the food is great. There's a beautiful diner not too far away from me in a place called Medina, or Medina as they call it. It's called Jane's Diner. And it's ran by a bunch of people who are, I guess, Eastern European immigrants. And the food there is beautiful, and it's made with real ingredients, and it tastes real. And if you eat once, you're full all day. But it's not heavy at the same time. But the people are friendly. The people are nice. The customer service, because it's family owned and they care and they respect what they're doing, is impeccable. And that's another great thing about small towns, is usually the customer service you get is much better. But like I said, the choice is before us. In living in America, do we chase the chaos of the city, forever chasing a dream that slips through our fingers? Or do we embrace the peace, the simplicity, and the true wealth of living in a smaller town? And in this pursuit, not just find a place to live, but a place to thrive. And that's it. If this kind of conversation and vision kind of speaks to you, I want to invite you to like and subscribe. We definitely want to change the tone of the channel a bit and kind of get away from just the negative, because although there's a lot of things to complain about, there's still a lot of beauty and things that I do love about this country, and I want to choose to highlight them as much as we do kind of point out kind of the negative aspects of life and situations here in America. Because I do find that a lot of the things that we still have here are worth speaking up about and worth fighting for. So yeah, share your thoughts below. What do you think about small towns? I'm sure a lot of you have grown up in them and lived in them, and just tell me what you think. And thanks for sticking around. We appreciate you. Have a good one.